What if I told you that the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world isn't a country? It's an activity that, every single day, pushes up to 137 species of plants, animals, and insects to extinction. This isn't a dystopian future. It's the reality of deforestation, and it has triggered a cascade of global crises, a domino effect that's shaking the very foundation of our planet. Today, on G Fun Facts Online, we're not just talking about cutting down trees. We're tracing the ripples, following the dominoes as they fall, from the Amazon rainforest to the weather in your backyard, and discovering how the silent cry of the forest has become a deafening roar we can no longer ignore. So what exactly are we talking about? Deforestation is, simply, the purposeful clearing of forested land. But the scale is anything but simple. Imagine an area larger than the entire European Union. That's how much forest the world lost between 1990 and 2020. A staggering 420 million hectares, and the destruction hasn't stopped. Every single year we lose another 10 million hectares, an area about the size of Portugal. The hotspots for this destruction are the world's tropical rainforests, the Amazon, Southeast Asia, and Africa. The main culprit? Agriculture. Vast forests are cleared for cattle ranching and to grow crops like soy and palm oil, ingredients found in countless products on our supermarket shelves. Add to that logging for timber and paper, and the expansion of roads, dams, and mines, and you have a relentless machine clearing the green lungs of our Earth. This brings us to the first and perhaps most monumental domino, the climate crisis. Forests are our planet's best defense against global warming. They are massive carbon sinks, breathing in carbon dioxide and locking it away in their trunks, roots, and the soil beneath them. But when we clear and burn these forests, that stored carbon is released back into the atmosphere in enormous quantities. Deforestation is responsible for up to 20% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. That's why, if deforestation were a country, it would rank third in emissions, right behind China and the United States. This creates a terrifying feedback loop. As the planet warms, forests become more vulnerable to droughts and wildfires, which in turn accelerates their destruction and releases even more carbon. Nowhere is this danger more real than in the Amazon rainforest. Scientists warn it's approaching a tipping point, where it could irreversibly transform into a dry savanna. The Amazon stores around 120 billion metric tons of carbon. Its collapse would unleash a carbon bomb that would make it virtually impossible to limit global warming to safe levels, altering weather patterns and accelerating climate change for everyone on the planet. As the climate domino falls, it hits the next one: biodiversity. Forests are the most biodiverse places on land, home to over 80% of all terrestrial plant and animal species. They are an intricate web of life. Deforestation systematically dismantles this web. Clearing forests destroys habitats, leaving countless species with nowhere to live, breed, or find food. This is what leads to that shocking statistic I mentioned earlier. We may be losing up to 137 species of plants, animals, and insects every single day due to rainforest destruction. We see it happening to iconic species like the orangutan, whose home in Borneo and Sumatra is being leveled for palm oil plantations. Tigers, jaguars, and so many others are fighting for survival as their forest homes vanish. It's not just animals. We're losing plants, many of which we haven't even discovered yet, that could hold the key to new medicines or scientific breakthroughs. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This crisis is directly linked to our own consumption. The global demand for beef, soy, and palm oil, largely driven by developed nations, is effectively exporting extinction to tropical countries. The next domino to topple is one we often overlook: the world's water cycles. Forests aren't just carbon sinks. They are giant, living water pumps. Through a process called transpiration, a large tree can release hundreds of liters of water vapor into the atmosphere every day. This moisture forms clouds and returns to the earth as rain, Forests literally act as rainmakers. When we cut them down, we break this cycle. The air becomes drier, leading to less rainfall, prolonged droughts, and even desertification. The Amazon, for example, generates a huge portion of its own rainfall. Continued deforestation there threatens water security across all of South America. But here's the paradox: deforestation can cause both droughts and floods. Without the dense root systems of trees to bind the soil and absorb water, heavy rainfall just rushes across the land. This leads to massive soil erosion and devastating floods downstream. This runoff also carries pollutants like fertilizers and pesticides into rivers, contaminating drinking water for millions. And this isn't just a local problem. The connections are global. Scientists have found that deforestation in the Amazon can reduce rainfall in North America, and clearing forests in Central Africa can impact weather in the American Midwest. The pulse of the forest is felt around the world. This brings us to the fourth domino, the one that hits closest to home for millions: the human cost. For the indigenous communities who have been stewards of the forests for millennia, deforestation is an existential threat. Their cultures, their livelihoods, their very identities are tied to the forest. When their ancestral lands are seized for logging or farming, it often involves violence and human rights abuses. They are displaced, pushed into poverty, and disconnected from the very source of their cultural heritage. Beyond indigenous communities, millions of people rely directly on forests for food, fuel, and income. Deforestation rips away this natural safety net. The short-term economic profits from cutting down a forest rarely benefit the local people and are dwarfed by the long-term costs. The degraded soil and disrupted water cycles lead to crop failures and food insecurity. And there's a direct link to our health. As humans encroach further into forests, we increase our contact with wildlife, creating a fertile ground for zoonotic diseases like Ebola to jump to humans. The smoke from forest fires chokes nearby communities, causing severe respiratory problems. The cost is measured not just in dollars, but in lives, cultures, and well-being. So you can see how all these dominoes are connected, creating a global ripple effect. What happens in a remote part of Borneo or Brazil doesn't stay there. We've seen how the fate of the Amazon affects climate and weather patterns across continents. But the connection is also economic. The global demand for products like your beef burger, your soy latte, or the palm oil in your shampoo directly fuels the bulldozers. We, as consumers, are often unknowingly part of the problem. The economic impact is mind-boggling. The World Bank estimates that the destruction of nature, with deforestation as a major component, jeopardizes resources that generate an estimated $44 trillion of economic value annually. That's about half of the world's entire GDP. We are, quite literally, destroying the natural capital that our global economy is built upon. This all sounds incredibly bleak, I know. It's a crisis of immense proportions. But it is not insurmountable. We have the knowledge and the tools to turn the tide. This isn't about giving up. It's about getting smart and getting to work. First, we must protect the forests we still have. This means creating and effectively managing protected areas, and critically, recognizing the rights of indigenous peoples and supporting them as the best guardians of the forest. Studies consistently show that forests managed by indigenous communities have the lowest rates of deforestation. Second, we must restore what we've lost. This involves both reforestation, which is replanting trees where they once stood, and afforestation, which is planting trees in new areas. These projects sequester carbon, rebuild habitats, and stabilize those broken water cycles. Third, since agriculture is the #1 driver, we have to make it sustainable. Practices like agroforestry, where crops are grown among trees, can boost biodiversity, improve soil, and provide more stable incomes for farmers. Governments need to step up with smarter land use planning. Fourth, we need to change the economics. We have to make a living forest more valuable than a dead one. This can be done through things like carbon pricing, payments for ecosystem services, and international programs like REDD+, which stands for Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation, where developed countries can help fund conservation in tropical nations. And finally, there's you, there's me. Our individual actions matter. We can make conscious choices, like reducing our consumption of products heavily linked to deforestation, like beef, and looking for certifications like the Forest Stewardship Council, or FSC, on wood and paper products. We can support organizations working on the front lines and demand stronger environmental policies from our leaders. It all adds up. The fate of our forests is the fate of our world. The story of deforestation is a story of interconnectedness, a stark reminder that a rapidly changing climate, a catastrophic loss of species, disrupted water supplies, and human suffering are not separate issues. They are all ripples from the same stone thrown into the pond. They are all falling dominoes. But there is hope. A global movement is growing, from indigenous leaders defending their ancestral lands to scientists developing new ways to monitor forests, from companies cleaning up their supply chains to citizens demanding change. The path forward requires a fundamental shift in our thinking, a recognition that a healthy planet is the only foundation for a healthy and prosperous society. The silent cry of the forest is no longer silent. It's a call to action for every single one of us. And the time to answer that call is now.